Hi, this is Dummy and Punk, and I'm going to be showing off the Advanced Details module. To get started, the first thing we're going to need to do is create a texture array for details. To do this, you just create a normal text array as you would with MicroSplat. Now over here in the texturing mode, you'll notice that there's a new option, Advanced Details. Click that. And then you set up your texture as you normally would. You'll notice now, instead of an AO, there's an alpha section. This is used for the alpha mask. The alpha mask controls all the blending, so you need to make sure this is assigned. If you don't have a special alpha channel already created for your texture, you can just use the height map and it should work just fine. Or you can even try the smooth or an AO. But if you do that, you might want to hit the normalize. The normalize will try to normalize your values between 0 and 1. So if you find that you have a texture where all the setting or all the colors are between 0.5 and 0.7 and you go to paint, you'll find that it only paints in those ranges, and that's not very intuitive. So if you find you're having issues with that, you can just hit normalize when you go to build and it might help out. Now I already have one set up, so I'm going to move past the rest. Hit terrain, select MicroSplat. Now we're going to enable details. Once we have that enabled, we need to assign our texture arrays. I already have this done. Down here we have the global UV scale and offset, and we have a pertex. The pertex are always on. There is no off or on. It's all built in, and sample at the same time. Before I get into that though, I'll get back to that later. We're going to start the painter up. To do that, just go to Window, MicroSplat, and Detail Painter. Almost said Effects Painter. And then we can click on our terrain, and we're ready to go. In our painter, we have a couple different visualizations that you can use how you want. You can use the projector, which kind of matches the Unity terrain. You can use disk, or you can use sphere. And then each one of them you can set the color and also the max brush range. Also, to paint, make sure active is on. I'm just going to keep it on projector for now. Now down here we have our settings for painting. Most of these are self-explanatory, but once we get down here to the height mask and angle mask, these are something a little different. What these are height and angle restrictions that are per pixel. To demonstrate this, I'm going to move the height down. Or first, let me just paint to show. As we can see, we have texture and it's painting on. Nothing too special, but it's more or less looking like it's an extra texture just added in. And this could be desirable or not. There's a bunch of different ways you can customize this, and I'll show you how. But back to this, if I move the height mask down, and now go to paint, you'll notice that's only painting in the bottom portion of the texture. If I move this back up, it'll only paint on the top. And this, as I said, this is per pixel, so now say I have it painted over the top a bunch over here, and then I move back down. Over here it's painted on the bottom half of the height, and over here it's painted on the top half, so they blend in smoothly. And this also works with angles. Let me find a nice little mossy texture. As you can see, I'm painting on some moss. It's alright. Turn up the angle a little more. I like that a little better. And they do blend into each other. So they will, you only can use one texture per pixel, but you can do a lot of extra customizing with it. So you can do some cool effects. To demonstrate a little more of this, I'm going to go over to the material section. Now over here, what this is it's the same thing as the pertex in the material as if you opened up over here. But I found that it was very annoying to have to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and select and lock and back and forth. So I just built in the per text right here so I can go make your adjustments super quick. We have our UV scale, our offset, normal what you'd expect, and then your indexes. Now I'm kind of going to go, this might be a little weird, but I'm going to go from bottom to top. Over here we have our contrast. We have height. Oh, let me paint a little heighty area. Off. We have height contrast, so we can make it sharper or smoother. And over here we have our angle. We have our angle contrast, so we can also make that smoother or sharper. And then we have our alpha contrast. Now the alpha works in two different ways, depending on which blend mode. This setting up here you have. Now let's see. To demonstrate this, I'm just going to set this to alpha blended. You'll notice it looks a little bit different. Now the difference between these blend modes is the weighted paint's more weighted on it, as if you were painting on a train, on a uni train, and you weren't using height blending. That would more represent what the weight blending would be, as opposed to alpha would be more height blended, but they work a little bit differently. And the alpha works separately for each one. Now, to properly demonstrate this, I'm going to find a texture more suitable for the alpha. There we go. This is all per text too, so you can have one that's weighted, one over here that's alpha, and it's per text, so you can do a lot of customizing. Now this one is alpha, and move it down a little bit, target value, there we go. And as we can see, it's painting on kind of like a sprite detail or decal kind of like effect where it's alpha masked with the contrast and the alpha channel. You can make that harder, smoother, find out how you want it. Right there, like that. And if I go to target value, see how the target value really affects how it looks. It blends in this mode. A way to describe it is it's more like pushing the texture from the bottom upward. So if we have a little bit, right, turn it low over here, and then turn up the target value higher, more details will pop out. If that makes sense? And, like I said, they blend into each other. So now we have some moss over here, into some rocks. Now back to material. Right here in the normal, what this does is blend in your normal into the base texture. So slide that down, now it's just albedo. Turn it all the way up, it's all the detailed textures normal. I find a lot, it's a little, right around 70 seems to be pretty good to me for a lot of things. But there's a lot of customizing, you can use it how you want, set up every texture independently. If you go back to weight, use the contrast. Now that's what I was going to say. Sorry about that. It's kind of weird going back and forth, but it made more sense to explain the contrast before I went into blending. The alpha in the weight mode acts more like a multiplier into it. So if you have it all the way down, it'll paint just like a straight weighted paint, and then you turn it up, it'll multiply the alpha into it. Now, back to alpha. That is my favorite one currently. I might add more. The overlay, what this does is blends into straight albedo over the texture so you can get some little more detail or more or less a tint to things. If you notice, it's not much of an effect, or it could be if we turn it all the way up. Get the contrast so it's super sharp. That doesn't look great, but it works good for example. We turn the overlay up. See we're blending in some of the texture into it, still overlapping the contrast and masking to give it a little tint to make blend smoother or a little bit of artistic effect, depending how you want. The overlay is not affected by a mask or the normal blend. It just straight in an albedo overlay. Now, oh yeah. Now another cool thing you can do with these two blend modes and all the contrast, you can obviously tell it's very texture independent. Like, you'll find that you can customize textures to be a lot different depending on how the alpha is that you sign and the settings you do. Turn contrast up. Damn, no. Yeah, I like these little branches. Anyway, what I wanted to show with that is right over here I have an alpha mask I made for a texture I'm working on that should be included with the module. I am not a texture artist and this is still a work in progress. Just letting you guys know. Now what I did right here is I used Substance Designer and Photoshop and still needs more work. Anyway, every leaf is painted the lower the higher the layer, the higher the alpha value, and it's just a straight value, no height or anything. You know, and what this does by doing it this way, and you can use all sorts of weird effects like this with your texture artist to get some cool transitions, however you want to paint, is if I go over here to the texture, I'm going to go into alpha, turn the contrast. That's good, normal. Yeah, there we go. What this will do is basically, with that, having the alpha set up like that, will pretty much be a density. Get a little closer. Turn it up more. Go. Now you can see, have these leaves turned down pretty. There we go. Is now basically I'm painting leaves by density. So turn it up, more leaves. Up more leaves. And turn it back down, less leaves, down. So you can use this to make cool effects. So like you can have your sticks and leaves straight valued like I have in that, and then you can have maybe some moss or grass in your texture that would be have like a height transition underneath, and your texture artist can put them in, and then you'll have it be able to paint with a cool transition to where the grass will fade in from the bottom and the leaves will pop in and out depending on how much density. You can do some really cool effects with this. Anyway, I think that's about everything there is to show right now. Hope you guys are interested and look forward to hearing your comments.